Welcome to our weekly Church on the Rock podcast. For more information, visit us at churchak.org, download our Church on the Rock AK app, or like us on our Facebook page. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy our weekly podcast.
We are in this series, Gen X. How many of you, when you see the little bumper video that we have there, you're like, nope, I could identify every item in that bumper video. That was me growing up. Really, only 5 of us have survived from Gen X. Okay. But really, it's a play on words for us because we're actually looking at Genesis and Exodus, but it also works because Gen X, my generation in particular, was this generation that came along and they were like, yeah, we don't know. They might succeed, they might fail, we're not certain. Let's call them Gen X. The generations before that, we had like the silent generation, we had the baby boomers. Oh, and of course, my favorite, the greatest generation. Whatever, you made it through the war. Good on you. We've had challenges. Have you heard of COVID? Anyways. So all of that to say that what God has done from the very beginning of the story is he has called each and every generation to join him in his redemption plan in the world. That every generation has an invitation from God to join him in the redemption of all things. And here's what's crazy. We looked at the story of Adam and Eve a couple of weeks ago. And when we look at Adam and Eve, I don't know if you know this, but they were colossal failures. Like, we are all in the mess that we're in because of the decisions that they made, and yet God was not finished with them. God immediately, from the moment of their sin, invited them back into relationship and restoration and still had a purpose and a plan for them to join him, which is also true of you and I and every other generation along the way. And then last week, Pastor Dale just nailed it, talking about family, God's plan for family, and looking at Abram and Sarai, which became Abraham and Sarah, and how the enemy has been at work since the creation of the world, attempting to destroy God's design for the family. And there's a real specific reason for that, because God was intending to bring his blessing in the world through the institution of the family. Don't be fooled. The attack on family is not a new thing. It's been going on since the creation of the world, and God wants to redeem generations through you and your participation in that. This week, my title is Traders and Tricksters. Not traitors, but traders. Traders and Tricksters. And I'm going to start with Hunters and Homeboys. And I did not spell it with a Z, although I was super tempted to spell it with a Z. Abraham and Sarah will have some kids, and here's what I've discovered in the scriptures. Often there is this unique challenge, in particular, that women through whom the promise is going to come through, women in these relationships with Abraham and with others find themselves unable to have children. Even though God has promised that through the birth of a child, redemption and restoration was coming, that he had a plan. And what's interesting to me is the frequency with which this happens. And more importantly, but the tendency in mankind to try and solve the problem themselves. And so out of those man-made solutions, that inability to trust God's promise, out of those situations come Ishmael, and come Esau, and come many others in which the Lord is actually given a promise and man tries to fulfill that promise through his own effort and creates more of a mess. Anybody ever experienced? Yeah, at least one honest person. I was just looking on this side. Anybody on that? If you want a really romantic Bible story, though, light some candles. Valentine's Day is coming up, and read the story of Isaac and Rebecca. Every time I read the story about him at the well and her coming over the hill riding on a camel and her hair's like blowing in the wind and it's like a super romantic story. I just encourage you, read it sometime. And here's what's really intriguing to me, that contrary to maybe popular opinion or what you've heard about the male-centric nature of God, when it comes to Isaac and Rebecca, Rebecca isn't just given to him by her dad. Rebecca's actually asked if she wants to go with him because it matters to God. In that relationship, there's this mutual desire to get it. You should just read it later with candles and stuff. But Genesis 25, verse 21, what we're going to discover is that Isaac and Rebekah have the same issue that we often find in the scriptures, and that is that she cannot have children, and she really wants to. So Isaac pleaded with the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was unable to have children. And the Lord answered Isaac's prayer, and Rebekah became pregnant with twins. I would love it if, like, every time I prayed, it was a double blessing, right? Like a double portion. I'm not sure she's all that thrilled about it. Anyone had twins here? Anyone, your baby was so big you thought you had twins? Yeah, I'm telling you, we have some good friends, Aaron and Jenny Weiser. Jenny's like 4'10". She is not a large person. I think she's actually, her DNA would reveal that she's an elf. Like Jenny was pregnant with twins. We were actually living with them at the time. And I just remember like when she would stand up and it looked like both children inside of her were like doing the Superman, standing on each other's shoulders, like she'd tip over if she didn't lean way. Anyways, you get the idea. But it can be a struggle, right, when you're carrying. Well, Rebekah has that struggle. Lord answered, and she became pregnant with twins, but the two children struggled with each other in her womb. So she went to ask the Lord about it. Why is this happening to me? She asked. And the Lord told her, the sons in your womb will become two nations. From the very beginning, the two nations will be rivals. One nation will be stronger than the other, and your older son will serve your younger son. Now, I want to make a distinction here between the foreknowledge of God and what maybe you would call the predestination of God. The fact that God knew what was going to happen or foreknew it does not mean that God made it happen. In fact, there's nothing that's a surprise to God. He sees the beginning and the end. And in this particular case, what he tells her is, here's what's going to happen. Whenever people enter into sinful behavior or sinful decisions or a lack of faith and trust in God, God does not cause that to happen, but he certainly knows what is going to happen. And so he tells her, before either of the children are born, that the older will serve the younger, which was culturally backwards. Now the twins are born, and when they come out, the younger has a hold of the heel of the older. Like he's trying to pull him back in. You talk about sibling rivalry. No, nope, you're not first. Right, there's a tug of war going on in that moment. And here's what, if you know anything about twins, and if you don't, you'll discover this really quick when I describe it to you. It doesn't matter if you were born 30 seconds before or if you were born 30 years before. If you were born first, you're the oldest. Right? And so you watch twins, you watch siblings who are twins, and they know exactly who was born first and how long before the other one they were born, because it matters to that. You can only imagine in this day, it actually mattered for some really significant reasons who was born first. But out of the gate, so to speak, you see the older and the younger are at odds with one another. Genesis 25, 27, 28. When the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the field, but Jacob was a peaceful man, living in tents. Now Isaac loved Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. In other words, Esau was a man's man, and Jacob was a mama's boy. Now, we have certain stigmas attached to that, or certain preconceptions about what it means to be manly and whatnot, but you would multiply that by about 1,000 for their day. These were the responsibilities of a man, and these were the responsibilities of a woman, and yet these boys find themselves, one of them is just really treasured and valued and loved by dad, Esau, for his skill in the field, and the other is really cherished and loved uniquely by mom, and he loves to be a homeboy. He loves to be at the house and helping out with the things around the house. And there's this rivalry that even goes into the parents' relationship. And there are few things, just so you know, that a son craves more than his father's attention and affection. There are also few things that a younger sibling craves more than anything the older sibling has. It doesn't matter what it is. With my girls, one of them could throw a toy away that they despise and hate, and one of the older siblings could find it in the trash can, pull it out, and love it, and suddenly the one who threw it away wants it back worse than anything on the planet. Like, I will give up my salvation just to get that. That was my favorite toy, but you threw it away. I know, but that was before I realized how much I love it. You don't love it. You just hate that she has it. Like, the younger sibling wants whatever the older sibling has more often than not. Genesis 25:29, this is true of Esau and Jacob. One day when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau arrived home from the wilderness exhausted and hungry. And Esau said to Jacob, I am starved. Give me some of that red stew. Now, I just want to pause there for a moment. I don't know if you've seen this before. Like, it's pretty common in most households, but this overstating something. Like, when my kids get hungry, they're not just like, man, I'm a little bit hungry. It's like, I am dying. I need food now. Or when your husband gets sick, right, he's popped this super high fever of 99. And suddenly he's immobilized on the couch. Honey, can you just bring a straw with that glass of water and hold it for me? I'm going to need a longer straw. I can't even turn my head. It's so much. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're like, really? 99? That's what I am every day. It's called menopause. So what do you got, menopause? What's going on with you? Like, anyways, getting way off track now. But this is what's happening because Esau comes in from the field. Now, to be clear, he's been out hunting for the day. He walks into the house. He's not carried on a gurney. And he comes into the house and he's like, I'm not going to make it unless I get a bowl of that stew right this second. I'm not hungry. I'm hangry, right? Like, I need food. I'm starved. Give me some of that red stew. This is how Esau got his other name, Edom, which means red. All right, Jacob replied, but trade me your rights as the firstborn son. It is so rare that the younger sibling needs anything, or the older sibling needs anything from the younger sibling. But when those moments arise, you can watch the wheels turning in a younger sibling's brain. Like, wait, this is that one moment. They need me. What could I get out of this deal? So Jacob, like has been the case since before they were born, wants the rights and the privileges of the firstborn. It was called the birthright. And just to be clear about what the birthright is, the birthright actually comes with some significant benefits. One of those is when the father dies, the firstborn son gets double the inheritance of everyone else. Sweet. But isn't just that. They are also believed to be the one blessed uniquely by God for the role that he has placed them in, because they also become the patriarch of the family. So when you were little, you were like, you're not the boss of me. But if you're the firstborn son, when father dies, it's true. They're not the boss of you. And in this case, what Jacob is asking for is the blessing of God, twice the inheritance of all of the other children, and to become the authority figure, the patriarch in the home. Tell you what, I'll trade you all of that for this bowl of stew. Now that's a crazy offer, isn't it? But if you were just to pause for a moment, I think there's something you and I need to discover about desires and passions and appetites. Which brings me to dog food and desire. My daughter, my oldest daughter, loves to catch any living thing. Like, I'm not even kidding. It doesn't matter if it's a fly or if it's a falcon, and she can do it. Like, there are times in the summer and the spring when I will come outside after I get up in the morning, and she will have already been up, and she will have anywhere from 5 to 15 finches in a cage. You think I'm kidding? I got pictures. I got proof. And she'll just play with them, and then she'll let them go. She discovered that she can coax them into my wife's little greenhouse, and once they're in there, they got one way out. And she just catches them. Like, she loves catching anything, squirrels, you name it. And she is, like, skillful and patient beyond belief. And in fact, we were down in Homer this past summer, and she decided she was going to up her game a little bit, and she was moving from finches to ravens. So she has this little, I guess the classic old-looking bird cage, she has one of those, and she opens up the door on it, and for 3 days, she puts out dog food in a trail and baits a raven. On day 3, it keeps getting closer and closer and closer, and on day 3, it sees that there's actually a pile in the cage, and it jumps into the cage, and she pounces in that moment, closes the door, and she has a raven. She even named it Kakua as its name, and she has it. And now, in the video that I have that I'm not going to show you because I don't want her to go to jail in the future. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on this kind of thing. No, but all of the other ravens are dive bombing to rescue their friend, and he's just going nuts in the cage, and she's like, get away! And she is not about to give up her quarry, and she just loves. Now, here's the thing. What she knew about the raven is that it could not resist the temptation. And no matter how long it took, it would eventually get itself imprisoned. She was willing to be patient. However long it took, what she knew is it could not resist that desire, that temptation, that drive. The truth is we all possess a myriad of temptations and drives and desires. And they're not all bad, by the way. We have some core desires, things like the desire for survival or satisfaction. They aren't inherently evil, but we pursue things like eating and sleeping and reproduction out of a desire for satisfaction and a desire for survival, or we have a desire for purpose. And so we work, we produce, we build, we have children, we do art, we have a desire for power, which isn't inherently evil, by the way. We have a desire for power, and so we pursue authority and responsibility and influence. But there are also lies that you and I believe when it comes to our desires. In fact, when I describe these, you'll probably resonate with them immediately. One of those lies is this. We believe that this one thing, if I could just get this, it would make me happy, fulfilled, content. We believe that if I could just have this one relationship or this one position or this much money or whatever it is, but this thing that we are craving, we actually believe that that thing will make us fulfilled, content, and happy. We overestimate the impact of that acquisition or accomplishment. It's called impact bias. We believe if I could just get this, my life would be complete. I've told you the story before about heading to the Polaris shop in Homer to get my first four-wheeler ATV. And I had decided before I went that I was going to get the cheapest version possible of the Polaris Ranger. You know, the green with the sissy tires. Somehow I came home with something a cross between an Apache helicopter and a Hummer. Like, oh no, you need the winch, and you should probably put a roof on it. You're going to need a windshield, of course, and you don't want that green one. Look at this orange one, because that hides better in the woods. And the tires, like, really? You want those tires? Because you might not even get out of the driveway with those. You need these tires. And like, by the time I left, I was thinking, why do I have a 50 cal mounted on the top of this thing? I don't understand anymore. Like, how did I end up with this? And the truth is that often this impact bias leads us to what we call buyer's remorse, right? You drive away and you're like, I don't know what I just did, but my kids aren't going to college, right? Like, I knew just a few moments ago I had to have this thing. We actually believe that that thing will make us happier, more fulfilled, more content than it actually does. And the other is that this one purchase, this one victory, this one relationship, this desire, it is actually the most important thing in my world right now. It's called focalism or tunnel vision. It's the only thing I can see. If I could just get my hands on this, if I could just get here, then it would actually make me fulfilled. It's the most important thing in the world right now. You've probably had this experience before, like you're thinking about the car that you really want, right? And all of a sudden, everyone you know has it, right? It's driving around everywhere, and you believe it must be a sign from the Lord that you saw 15 of them today driving around town. Forget the fact that you were actually sitting in the parking lot of the Jeep dealership, but, right, it's all that you can focus on, and so we fixate and we magnify one idea, one desire, one thing over all other things. And the truth is, we inherited a crippling flaw in the garden, and it is a chronic dissatisfaction with whatever we have. Which brings me to three things that you need to know about desires. The first one is this: God gave them, sin distorted them. In fact, if you were to trace any desire back to its actual roots, a desire for intimacy or a desire for authority or a desire, right? If you were to trace it back, a desire for joy or fulfillment or contentment, you could actually discover a desire that God hardwired into you. God gave them, but sin distorted them. And if you could recognize that, you could actually look at some of the things in your life and realize there's actually a core desire here that I'm trying to meet through a distorted way. God gave them, sin distorted them. And so sinless humanity desired God's presence. Fallen humanity desired God's position. Sinless humanity desired to rule over creation, but sinful humanity actually desired to rule over the Creator. Both desired to rule, but sin distorted it. Sinless humanity desired to selflessly love and serve others. Sinful humanity desires to be selflessly loved and served by others. Desires are something that God has given, but sin has distorted them. The second thing is this: that our desires are never fully and finally satisfied here and now. Even in the context of marriage, it actually reflects a desire that finds its ultimate fulfillment in God. And so our desires are actually never fully and finally satisfied here and now. And that's okay in this sense that you were created for something more. The scriptures describe it in this way: He has placed eternity in their hearts. And there are things you and I are designed for that will not fully and finally be satisfied until we're actually in eternity. My wife and I enjoy watching TV series from time to time. And I'm probably just like you. Kitchery has some challenges, but me, on the other hand, and so we get done watching an episode, and we do the same thing that you do. We get to the end of the episode, and we're like, that was so good. Well, let's go to bed and be responsible. No, we do what you do. We get to the end of it because they're masters. I think it's actually a work of Lucifer. They're masters at the cliffhanger, and so you get to the end of it, and you're like, what time do we have to be up in the morning? What time is it now? Can we take the kids potty? Like, we could get one, at least we could get the beginning of one in so that we know what happens. And anybody, come on, be honest, you're in church. Listen, what I've discovered over the years is that what I think will satisfy me is never fully and finally satisfied. I'm always chasing the next thing, and as soon as the series is done, they set it up in such a way that you have to watch the next one or the new show that's connected to that show. It's so diabolical. The third thing is this: not only did God give our desires and sin distorted them, they're never fully and finally satisfied here and now, but also our desires, they always scream now and never later. Like they want to be satisfied right now. I don't know if you know about this ice cream. I'll just tell you about it. I believe it's at Fred Meyer, just so you know. And I know this is the last day of 21 days of praying and fasting, so there you go. The sea salt caramel ice cream, it's like so creamy, so salty, and so caramely. Like, it's just so good. It's designed to be eaten by the gallon. Like, oh my goodness. And whenever my wife brings it home, she's like, I brought something home. I'm like, get thee behind me. No, when I brought something home, and my mind never goes, I'll have some of that one day. I'm not just whatever. Like, everything in me is like, now. Now, I need it now. I'm not going to make it. I'm going to perish. I'm starving. I've been out hunting all day. All I need is sea salt caramel ice cream now. Our desires are really wired to want to be satisfied right now, and patience and discipline and self-control are a challenge because our desires tend to scream now and never later. Which brings me back to our story, the classic sibling rivalry. It's already happening with my girls. The younger's like, what? You want my Lego? Right? For whatever reason, like, I can't even tell the difference between all the Lego people. I think you just change the head and it's a new person. Like, but that one, I've got to have that one. What? You want something from me? And a younger sibling will do this. The moment you need something from me, they begin thinking, okay, what can I trade for it? Because this is a rare opportunity. And so I can imagine the day is coming, right? When my girls, the older's like, can I wear that really cute skirt that you have? Now, first of all, I'm going to wonder why she wants to wear a really cute skirt. Because if I meet him, my desire to, okay, anyways, but like, why do you, okay, what? You need my skirt? Well, let me think for a moment. How about if I let you wear my skirt for tonight, you give me your car? Right? They're just going to shoot for the moon. And we can come down from there. We can start bartering, but I'm going to start way up here because it's so rare that you actually need something from me, which is exactly what is going to happen with Jacob and Esau, which brings me to stop. In the name of love. Genesis 25:32, Esau said, I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? Like, I am so hungry right now. This birthright is of no use to me. I might not make it the next 10 seconds. But what use is a birthright to me? And Jacob said this, swear to me now. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went away. Thus Esau despised his birthright. It's one of the saddest passages in the scriptures. Like, I'm starving to death. Tell you what, I'll give you this bowl of stew. I'll throw in some bread if you'll sell me the blessing of God, the provision, the authority and responsibility that's going to come. If you'll sell me your birthright for this bowl of stew, I'll make that trade. And Esau does it. How crazy is that? What would you do? Like, if in this moment you were able to jump in a time machine. Anybody watch Doctor Who? Great, uncultured swine. Doctor Who has this time machine. He's a time lord. He can go at any time, any place. He can show up and he can be there. It's called the TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And it's actually a phone box, a police box from England. Anyways, he gets in it. He can go anywhere. Imagine you and I could jump in the TARDIS and we could show up in this moment with Esau and Jacob. And Esau is about to make the trade. Jacob has said, swear it to me. What would you say to Esau in this moment if you could just show up and have a conversation? You'd be like, stop! Don't do it. I know you think that you're starving. Go eat some green beans or eat a leaf, bite a twig. I don't care. You're going to make it, but you are about to make a trade that you are going to regret for the rest of your life. You need to know something, Esau. Someday a deliverer for the world is coming. And what we've been told is that deliverer is going to come through your family line. That it's going to come, in fact, no less than 40 times in the scriptures, God will make this declaration about the coming Messiah. And it was the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, your dad, the God of Isaac, and the God of Esau. Because it goes to the firstborn son, the birthright does. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Esau. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Esau. All the way into the New Testament. I know you don't know what a New Testament is, you don't even know what an Old Testament is, but a day is coming when a book is going to be written, and that book is going to describe the family line of the Messiah, the Redeemer of the world. And in that family line, it's going to be this. And Abraham beget Isaac, and Isaac beget Esau, and Esau beget. That's going to be the family line. You're going to be in the family line of the Messiah. You'll be the son of the living God. You make this trade, and all that changes. It will forever be the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. That Abraham beget Isaac, and Isaac beget Jacob, and that will be the genealogy of the Redeemer of the world. You are about to give up more than you could ever possibly fathom. But here's the problem. Nobody could do that for Esau. And nobody will show up from the future in a time machine for you either. Because there are moments in front of you right now where you may be about to make a trade, a bowl of stew, for a birthright as a son or a daughter of a king of kings. It is not Esau's desire for the stew that is too strong. It is his desire for God's promise that is too weak. It isn't that his desire for the stew or your desire for that relationship or that promotion or that thing. It's not that your desire for that is too strong. It's actually that your belief and desire and passion for God's promises is too weak. In fact, C.S. Lewis describes it in this way. He says, "It would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us. Like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in the slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea, we are far too easily pleased." That'll preach all day. What I've discovered about myself, and I'm assuming it's true about you because it seems to be true about almost everyone in human history, is that our desire for things that are less than the fulfillment of the promises of God is often too strong, and our desire for his promises is too weak. He actually wants fulfillment for you, for me. He actually wants joy, unspeakable and full of glory for you, for me. He actually wants authority and responsibility and dominion for you and for me. And we try and chase it through 1,000 other ways in which they actually produce the opposite over time. Because our desires will not be fully and finally satisfied here and now. They always scream now, and they're never patient for later. If we could take it now instead of waiting for God, which is the problem they have over and over and over again in the Scriptures, I'm going to fulfill his promise through my own power. In fact, there are things that you're considering right now trading for a bowl of stew. You will eat, you'll drink, you'll get up, and you'll move on, not realizing in the moment that we have forever forfeited something we were actually called to enjoy. Sometimes it shows up in really little ways right now, and sometimes it's a really big decision you're wrestling with. That relationship that you shouldn't be in. That ambition that is driving you that isn't actually from the Holy Spirit. Here's what I know for certain, though. The enemy wants the same thing for you and for me that he wanted for Esau and for Adam and Eve and for Jacob and everyone. And that is total destruction. I want to be clear. I'm not referencing your eternal state with God. What I'm very much referencing is your purpose and your calling here and now. And he would much prefer those be diminished results at best, if not completely destroyed. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14 describes this moment. It says, "See to it that there be no immoral or godless person like Esau, who sold his own birthright for a single meal. For you know that even afterwards, when he desired to inherit the blessing, he was rejected. For he found no place for repentance, though he sought for it with tears." There are things you and I can forfeit. Things like our children's trust, things like our marriages, things like opportunities that we may never have the privilege of enjoying again. And in this moment, could I be the person who shows up for you? You could be the person who shows up for me in this moment. And could I say just stop and consider? Understand your passions and your desires. Recognize that you may be exchanging a bowl of stew for a birthright as a son or a daughter of the King of Kings. The difference between Esau and Jacob, and I want to invite the worship team to come, is that Jacob values the blessing of God above everything else. I would just say this, because next week we're going to get into Jacob's family, and it's a hot mess. Like, you think this situation's a mess? Wait till you hear what the family of Jacob looks like, and the marriages, and the concubines, and it's just a mess. That's a romance novel. It's not a good one either. It's just a mess, and what you're going to discover is that even in the middle of that mess, God is at work redeeming, and the nation of Israel will be born. It's just craziness. But here's what I want to tell you. Just because the Bible describes something does not mean the Bible prescribes that thing. Because that can be a real challenge when you're looking at stuff in the Old Testament. You're like, well, the Bible says it. Israel did it. Jacob did it. Abraham did it. But just because the Bible describes something, it's just telling you the facts of the story. It's one of the things I love about the Bible. But just because the Bible describes an event doesn't mean he prescribes the behavior. But here's what I can tell you about Jacob. The difference between Jacob and Esau is that although Jacob pursued it in a devious manner, what it revealed in his heart is that he valued the blessing and the favor of God above all else. And if you could start there, God will work the rest out in you and I. He's going to work it out in Jacob. It's going to be a long and a painful process. It's going to cause physical pain for him. But I can tell you this about him. He will not let go of the heel of the promise or the leg of the angel of the Lord when they're wrestling with one another. He desires the blessing and the provision and the calling of God above everything else. And if we could start there, God will work the rest out in us. Esau, he wants to fulfill his own passions and desires, and he is going to trade a bowl of stew for the blessing and the favor of God. And my question for you and my question for me is, what is your bowl of stew? What is it that's in front of you right now? It's in front of you yesterday. It's going to be in front of you tomorrow. Could you see it for what it is?
Thank you for listening. For more of our podcasts and to discover how you can connect, visit us at churchak.org or download our Church on the Rock AK app from either iTunes or Google Play.